أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا وعظيمنا ومولانا وأسواتنا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين ورضوان الله تعالى على صحابات الراشدين المباركين العادلين المخلصين والتابعين لهم بخير وإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعلينا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وأما بعد، ثم يقول الله عز وجل في كتابه المبين: يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. صدق الله العلي العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, we have a book that was published not long ago entitled Blackness in Islam. And I would like to, in this very first introduction to the book, explain to you why there was a need to publish this book, Blackness in Islam. As some of you may know, I co-authored 2 books in relationship to centering Black narrative. The first of those being Centering Black Narrative, Black Muslim Nobles Among the Early Pious Muslims. And the second of those being Centering Black Narrative, Ahlul Bayt, Blackness in Africa. Blackness in Islam builds upon those 2 earlier works and adds further information from those 2 works. Now, number 1, why write another book about the topic? Well, firstly, it was believed that the subject matter had not been fully exhausted. The great Shafi'i polymath who lived in Egypt, actually a Persian ancestry, Jalaluddin as-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala, actually wrote 3 books specifically on blackness. The great Hanbali polymath Ibn al-Jawzi, who also was a descendant of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he wrote a book specifically on this topic, Tanwir Ghabish fi Fadli Sudan wa Habish, and then also in other writings made mention of meritoriousness in terms of Black people. So, within Islam. So, just as those 2 previous books were written, we believe that the subject matter was not exhausted. Now, why even write about this to begin with? Some people may say, well, this is bringing racism into the deen, or this is bringing nationalism, Black nationalism into the deen. Why even write about this topic, Blackness in Islam? Well, we can pivot back to the reasons why Ibn al-Jawzi and as-Suyuti and others have written about this subject, in which there's a number of books that have been written about this topic, as well as chapters in other books that go all the way back to the time of, we could say, the 4th generation of Muslims, going back to the time of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala. And one of the reasons is to deal with the issue of Black self-loathing. We know that there is psychological and spiritual damage that can take place to people who are Black, who've been subjected to a series of overt as well as more implicit forms of racism. Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah ta'ala actually mentions this in the Muqaddimah, or the introduction of his book, Tanwir Ghabish fi Fadli Sudan wa Habish, or it is illuminating the darkness, or some would say illuminating or taking away the ignorance as it relates to the Abyssinians and the Blacks. Ibn al-Jawzi came across some of the most virtuous people that he had come across, that he had seen in Syria, and these happened to be Black people. And he saw them engaged in self-loathing, these Black people, very pious, very steadfast, very scrupulous. in their behaviors, but he saw them basically expressing speech and actions that we could consider inferiority complexes. So what Ibn al-Jawzi did, who was lighter skinned, who was Arab, he went and he wrote the book, Tanwir Ghabish fi Fadli Sudan wa Habish, and then he took the book and he handed it to those Abyssinian people, to those black people who were in Syria, and he said, "Here, read this." So this book was a type of medicine for those people who were involved in black self-loathing. The other issue, in terms of the need for the book or writing the book, that As-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, also wrote about, is to deal with the issue of those who aren't black through ignorance, not knowing the merits of people who are black, which then may cause a type of putting down the history, putting down the cultures of people who actually are black and Muslim. And we know that As-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala traveled to the Malian Empire. We know that As-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala had a black, an African wife, a black African wife, right? So we do know that within Muslim communities in the West, that there is an issue of anti-blackness within the communities, and in order to help in addressing this ignorance, that this topic is also needed. Now, there's a third topic that this book addresses that is different from Ibn al-Jawzi and As-Suyuti. May Allah's mercy be upon both of them, and like what motivated them to write such works. And this is to address and to respond to Orientalists as well as Pan-Africanists. And we say Orientalists could be black Orientalists as well. And those people who would say Islam makes Muslims who are black second-class Muslims, and they point to certain narrations which they misunderstand. They will reference certain narrations that are very weak or flat-out maldu'at, fabrications, and then they will point to certain things in Islamic history that they misinterpret, such as the revolution of the Zenj, for instance, since they see Islam from the very beginning was anti-black, which then they would then make the argument that black people who convert to Islam are basically trading in the religion of one oppressor, meaning Christianity, for the religion of another oppressor, meaning the Arab. So Blackness in Islam also deals with this issue of clarifying some of these things that are referenced by the Orientalists and the Pan-Africanists, and stating their proper interpretations of those things they've skewed, or mention those things that they reference that are flat out fabrications that they reference, that our scholars going back centuries ago looked at and said clearly that these are not things that we can safely attribute to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or to his family members as well as his righteous companions. These are things that are not acceptable, right? So with that, my brothers and sisters in Islam, we are going to take a journey in discussing some of the contents of the chapters in Blackness in Islam. And I encourage you to get the book, which you can get at Al-Ghazali Institute, and follow along with the rest of what's going to be discussed in some of the highlights بإذن الله تعالى. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.